the issues, becoming more aware about nature and the protection of nature, and having a more humble life, not a life of comfort, of spending, of what people think it's happiness, but having a life of really awakening to a more minimalistic approach to life.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Coffee Made Me Do It podcast. My name is Dario, and today I was very fortunate to have a wonderful conversation with Pepe and his son Jose. Pepe is the owner of the very famous Finca Soledad in Ecuador. We have the privilege of working with Pepe and his amazing coffees at Bluebird, and after spending some time together in Athens, we had to tee up this podcast and have a conversation about what makes his work and his coffee so special. He's an amazing guy, being the first Latin American to solo the 7 summits, and since then has gone on to have a prolific coffee career, even though he's just getting started. So I hope you will sit back, relax, enjoy this episode. We can't wait. Ciao.
Yo.
Pepe, how you doing, man?
So happy to hear your voice, Dario.
Oh, man, it's great to speak to you as always.
All right.
How's the
So you're
audio?
in South Africa. Audio's fine. I can listen to you perfectly. You have a beautiful voice anyways. South African accent is pretty high.
That's amazing, man. Thank you. I don't think many people share that opinion.
Oh, no, man. I fucking love it. It comes with an attitude. So that's why you guys have a big chance in the World Baristas soon, or World Brewers, because I love the way you guys speak, and phonetics, and the way you talk and communicate is so important for judges. Not just the beverage, not just the coffee, but also the way you communicate. And I think you guys have a good advantage there,
Hey,
especially with our friend.
That's awesome.
Fanny.
I've never heard that perspective. Thank you. That's really awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I've spoken with Matt Winton about it, and Australians also have that beautiful way of speaking, and I think that really connects with judges in a way.
Oh, that's amazing. Jeepers, man. How are you doing? I know you've just been at the coast recently with your family. Are you all well?
Yeah, everything is good. We had a nice time in the surf. I did a little bit of stand-up paddleboard with humpback whales. That was fun.
No ways.
That was absolutely fun. Yeah, man. It's just that season of the year that we get the humpbacks come to mate, to reproduce, and have babies, because the waters are very hot in this area. So August, September, October is high season for humpback whales, and they get really close to you. They're not like dangerous, and huge animals, man. Fucking huge animals.
That's incredible. And far off the coast, like, do you have to go up by boat, or do you literally paddle from the shore?
No, man. You could kind of swim to them, because they come very, very close to the shore. But I did it on a stand-up paddleboard, so it was really, really awesome, man.
Wow, that's incredible. Did you get some waves as well? I don't know if there's much surf in that region.
Yeah, there were very small waves, and I have a big board because I've been surfing, or trying to surf, like for 40 years now. Not very good at it.
Oh, man.
It's nice.
Time doesn't always lead to improvement, does it?
Yes, exactly. Maybe if you let things happen more organically, naturally, and just contemplate some other people surfing nice, and you're just standing on your wave. Yes,
Exactly.
standing on your board.
I actually had this conversation with someone the other day when I was like, 15, 16 years old. My friends and myself used to say, by the time we're 20, we're going to be doing full rotation airs, and we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be doing that. And I'm 36 this year, and none of that's happening. So time was not the solution,
There you go. I'm 50-year-old, and it hasn't happened either. So I'm just contemplating more.
Maybe that's our next career. Hey, after coffee, we'll become serious surfers. So
yeah, exactly. Very excited to have here my son. Jose is here with me. He's 18-year-old, and he's moving to New York City tonight. So
amazing.
Pretty excited about it.
Hi, Jose. Nice to meet you.
Hi, how you doing, Dario?
Yeah, so good, man. So good. I wish I was there in person with you guys, but it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful, man. We've developed a very nice relationship with you, and we're so excited that we got to meet you in Athens, and Fanny and the team. And I think what you're doing is very, very important, because we need more people like you in the Southern Hemisphere doing like really good stuff about quality, and sharing the responsibility of roasting amazing content and sharing it to the community. So I think that's something that was waited. that the southern hemisphere starts to rise, not just for production, but also for roasting and sharing and brewing and telling stories. So I think you're a pioneer there.
No, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think, yeah, I mean, we actually, Fani, Katie and myself have plans to jump on a podcast at some point and talk about the highlights of that trip to Athens and to Istanbul. Beautiful. Before that. And we just had such an amazing time. But we were laughing the other day about the incident we had with the taxis and everything when we ended up picking up on the side of the road. Oh, man. For our listeners, I'll just explain from my perspective. But Katie, Fani and I were driving from our accommodation in Athens to the venue. And we're kind of just driving along, like navigating this crazy traffic. And I think Katie sees you standing on the side of the road, Pepe, waiting for a taxi. And then we frantically start trying to call you to say, listen, ignore the taxis, jump in with us and let's get going. But you jumped into a taxi first and then we made the call happen. And in the middle of traffic, you jumped out the taxi, jumped into the car with us, and we ended up having an amazing time driving to the venue together. So very, very fortuitous.
Yeah, man. How could you plan for something like that, man? That's what I call pure synergy. Like in the middle of Athens, in the hectic traffic of 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm waiting for my Uber to go to the show, and you guys just pop up like angels, man. You're like, hey, you want to share? Yeah, fuck that. So it was a beautiful thing because it ended up becoming like a routine, because the next day you guys helped us up again, and then you helped the PM Cup Taster team.
Yeah.
So we're all like so grateful for you, man. We got to share stories and have some downtime, like just driving and having fun with GT and yeah, that was great.
Absolutely. No, it was a highlight. Absolutely. It was such a highlight. I think, there's a lot for us to potentially talk about in this conversation, but I think, going back to pre-coffee days, before you came into coffee almost sounds like it was almost a mistake, not a mistake necessarily, but like an unintentional career path. But a long time before coffee, you've had an incredibly interesting life. I remember you telling me about moving around a lot in your childhood and ending up in nature and leading you to a very interesting career. Can you kind of give us your, like, a bit of an origin story, if you would? How did you get going, man?
For sure, man. It's quite a story of incidents and accidents and luck, and it wasn't planned at all. So I'm the son of a diplomat family. My father was an ambassador for many years representing Ecuador all around the world. So I traveled from very young, which is good in a way because you get to know more places, but it's kind of sad in another way because you don't grow up with friends that you had in school for all your life or family. You just kind of become an errant. So that made me, fall in love with nature, I guess. And it was me and my sister traveling with my father and mom. And I fell in love for the mountains, and my sister fell in love for the ocean. She became a dive master and instructor, lived 34 years diving all her life. And I became a mountain climber, mountain guide at the beginning, and then an explorer, which led me to climb mountains all around the world. And I did a mountaineering solo project called the Seven Summits, which involves climbing the highest mountain of every continental peak. And I was actually the first Latin American to achieve that goal in 2003, 2006.
That was incredible.
Quite,
so obviously everyone knows Everest. What are the other 6 peaks you would have climbed?
Yeah, in Africa, actually, it's Kilimanjaro, which stands tall in Tanzania. In South America, it's Aconcagua, which is in Argentina. In North America, it's Mount McKinley or Denali in Alaska. In Europe, most people think it's Mont Blanc, but actually there's a part of Europe that involves a little bit of Russia. So there's a mountain in the Caucasus region called Mount Elbrus. That's the one. Asia, of course, Everest. And then some people talk about Australia being a continent. So there's a mountain there called Mount Kosciuszko, which I climbed. But there's some other people that consider Oceania a continent. So I had to climb a mountain in Indonesia, in Papua, called the Carlson's Pyramid, where you go into a deep jungle hike or trek or exploration, surrounded by cannibal tribes, and you have to kind of befriend one of them so they protect you from the other ones, because there are some good cannibals and bad cannibals. So yeah, I learned that as I walked, and it was nice. It was a great expedition. That one, I climbed a mountain called Carlson's Pyramid, which has a 3,000 foot 90 degrees rock climb. to get to the summit, and I did that solo without a rope and anything. So that was pretty rough. That was crazy, man. Yeah, that was crazy. But I was more scared about the cannibals, actually. But I ended up being really good friends with them because I had my speakers. I like music. I'm a big rock fan. I'm a music fan. I think music, just like coffee, opens your mind and opens your sensory to become more aware about life. You know, that's something I think we share with Fanny.
Absolutely.
I'm a big rock fan. In that case, I was listening to Bob Marley, and Bob Marley, man, made those cannibals connect with me like in a very nice way. They were dancing to it. They were so happy with it, man.
That is
really
unbelievable. So it was almost safer being on a vertical face than it was actually at the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah, man. Yes.
I
almost killed myself a few times in my life, but I just try to remember the good things, you know.
That's amazing. Of the 7 peaks, which would be the most challenging or the most memorable?
All of them had something very special, you know. In the Nadi, I also climbed a vertical ice face of almost 3,000 feet too, and I got caught in a storm, almost fell off the cliff. So I have good memories from that. And Aconcagua was also crazy. It's a very, very long access mountain. You have to walk for like 40 kilometers to get there, and then acclimatize and all, and ended up doing that in 24 hours in and out. So I was pretty much running up the mountain. Kilimanjaro was beautiful because of the connection with Africa, you know, the continent that pretty much gave birth to humanity. So you do feel this inner connection with the sensible souls of Africa and the land and animals, and the air you breathe is so special. I'm sure you realize and feel that. It's a very special continent, you know. So I have only good memories from those days. Only good memories. But what's funny, as a fact, is that I didn't drink coffee back in those days because I grew up seeing my dad drinking Nescafe.
Yeah.
And Nescafe was around my life everywhere. And I just thought, that sucks, man. Nescafe is such a ugly beverage. And I was drinking tea, you know. I would drink jasmine tea. And jasmine tea was all around my life, florals and stuff like that. And coffee only came very, very late.
Really? That's so interesting. I had a very similar experience. I also grew up around instant coffee and just really, really bad coffee. And I think my first few experiences were actually, I was switched off of coffee more from the heat than the flavor. I really didn't like the bitter flavor from the instant coffee my parents were drinking, but I burnt my tongue so many times taking that first sip of that boiling hot coffee, and that just switched me off completely. So I only also started drinking coffee when I was 24.
Oh, there you go. I think we have a very similar path in that way, you know, in that sense. That's very interesting.
Yeah, really interesting, man. And then obviously, Pepe, from my recollection from our car rides in Athens, it was an injury that stopped the mountaineering and moved you into farming. Is that correct?
Well, the thing is that when I was traveling, and I traveled over 150 countries in all this crazy life, I always wanted to, you know, stop at some point in my life and buy a piece of land that was maybe destroyed by humanity and try to fix it and, you know, plant trees and bring the ecosystem back. I had this goal, you know, like just like you have a goal of climbing Everest, for example, you can have a goal of retributing to society in a way, because you've traveled so much and you've seen all the damage that we as a society, as a kind, have done to the planet. So I wanted to like take some piece of land that was really barren and destroyed and try to put it back to become a terroir, and that takes like 20 years, you know. And that was my initial dream, you know, like just buy a piece of land and regrow nature into it as a contribution to all that I've been able to live and explore in our globe. So it wasn't related to coffee. It was more related to like making a sustainable eco-farming thing, like with trees and animals and all. But someone said, you have to plant coffee because this is a coffee area. Because I ended up in Intag, which is a North Ecuador valley that's very well known around the world for coffee and fighting against mining companies and stuff like that. So I'm like, no, I don't want to plant coffee. Coffee sucks. And people were like, no, you have to plant coffee because this is a coffee community, a coffee area, and you will love coffee. So I said, okay, let's try a few plants, you know. So I ended up planting some coffee under the trees that I was planting. And after 4 years, I totally fell for it, man. I totally fell for it. You know, coffee made me do it. You know, that's perfect for me. I totally fell for it. My wife is like, you all only talk about coffee. Can you talk about something else? And I'm like, no, I can't. Coffee is everything for me. You, I fell first for the plants, then I fell for the processing, then I fell for the roasting. But at the end, I think what really gets me crazy about coffee is the sensory part of it, the amazingness of flavors that you can feel in your brain, and those translate into like a sensory revolution, like an awakening. Because I do think like the priests in Ethiopia and Sudan and Yemen that first started working with coffee, they thought this was magic medicine, and they kept it like that for centuries. Only us, transformed it into more like a drug, the caffeine thing. But I think coffee relates a lot more into like a medicinal world, an awakening world, a spiritual world than anything else. That's my vision.
That's incredible. I think we definitely connect on so many levels there, and it's definitely the more like the subtle flavors and the exploration of what coffee can taste like that motivates me in Bluebird as well. I didn't set out to start a coffee company. I didn't set out to even start a business. I was just following a passion into coffee, and that led
Cool.
to Bluebird. I didn't start with the business in mind. I started with flavor and exploring flavor at first, and then that turned into kind of like I had to start Bluebird to be able to work with the coffees I wanted to work with, to actually have access. So I think we definitely share that kind of, it was that wasn't the main reason. It wasn't business first, and then the product was the product first, and that turned into a business.
It's definitely a passion that grows into you. It's something that you don't expect, because you first take it as like an experience, what is this about, and then it really catches up to you and grows into your veins and becomes your life. Your life fully.
Exactly. And so on Finca Soledad, you aren't farming a hell of a lot of coffee. It's only a few hectares of extremely high quality coffee that you're producing at the moment. Is it 5 hectares? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's 5 hectares. We're thinking about growing a bit, but then we decided just to stay small, because that way we could control a little more, and also have more free time, to go surf and to go to fairs and stuff like that. My aim with coffee is not to be rich. It's just to have a fair life, and live off nature and protect nature and give a message. Because I do think that I was born to talk to people and to try to create awareness. I studied psychology and inspire people by acts. I'm not meaning that for this a person would want to climb Everest, because that's not the issue. The issue is becoming more aware about nature and the protection of nature, and having a more humble life, not a life of comfort, of spending, of what people think it's happiness, but having a life of really awakening to a more minimalistic approach to life, and more respectable way of living, also sharing and representing. And I think in that sense, coffee is the perfect vessel, because coffee depends on nature, and coffee is something that's widely consumed in the society. Like millions of people drink coffee every day. So we have this vessel that we can try and inspire people to be better and happier at what they do, but also more responsible.
Well, I think it's incredible that, your relatively short time, not relatively short, your very short time in coffee compared to a lot of producers, and the reach that you've been able to have already has been amazing. And I think that speaks to your passion and to your ability to communicate. I mean, if I remember correctly, it's just a few years ago, and Finca Soledad was pretty much an unknown entity, and in a couple of years exploded onto the world stage, used at World Barista Champs, World Brewers Cup in the last cycle, and just the fan and what's the right word now? Almost a cult following that has started around your coffee around the world is absolutely incredible. And I think it does have so much to do with your philosophy and your style of communication, on top of the fact that your coffee is exceptional. I think you're doing an amazing job for coffee, and whether you farm 5 hectares of coffee or 500,000 hectares of coffee, please, whatever you do, keep being an advocate for your beliefs, because it's helping everybody, and you're sharing such a great message.
Oh, thank you so much, Dario. And today is a very special day too. It's 1st of October, which marks the International Coffee Day. Here in Ecuador is also very special, because it's like the floration of coffee starts like in these days, normally in the end of September, beginning of October. So it's we call it also the beginning of the cycle of coffee, because after floration, after 7 months, you start harvesting, and everything goes by. And I've been talking to people around about what does it mean, the 1st of October. And in a very wide, broader sense, I think it means community. It means that we are a big, huge community, a global community that's creating a new awareness, a new revolution, a new awakening for this sensory experience, more responsible consumers, and bonding. And in that sense, I think you are doing a great job, because I know you come from a country that doesn't have much coffee culture, doesn't grow coffee, maybe wine. You are doing an amazing job, because in the Southern Hemisphere, you're really raising voice and awareness about what it is to roast really good, high quality coffee, and also share it with all the people in the beautiful coffee shop. I remember when we started our relationship, you were also starting to build Bluebird Coffee, like this beautiful place, like a wine cellar. So you really didn't try to save money doing that. You really put the best that you could into making this amazing roastery coffee shop. And that to me inspired me. I mean, I have to work with Dario, because this guy is really putting everything into this business, so you could really tell there's passion there.
Oh,
and,
thank you.
From that day, I kind of fell in love with the idea of working with you, and it's been great, man. It's been an amazing ride, and I hope it just keeps happening, because I really want to keep working with you long term.
I feel the same way, Pepe, and I really appreciate the partnership. And your coffees have been sent all over the world. I think we've now shipped Finca Soledad to around 20 countries, if I'm not mistaken. And
wow, that's amazing.
The feedback we've had has been absolutely exceptional, time and time again. And yeah, for us, it's just an absolute pleasure. I actually bought a new roasting machine specifically to be able to work with your coffees and coffees like yours from producers who share, very similar mindset to you. People like Kai Jansen and guys at Lost Origin now, who are doing an amazing job in Panama, Franceschi Coffee, and some of our favorite producers who are producing a relatively small amount of coffee. We want to have the best chance we possibly can to bring out the absolute best qualities of the coffees you've worked so hard to produce.
And the idea is also to share it with as much people as possible. That's why we were talking about the dosing, why people sell 1 pound bags. You should sell like 21 gram bags, 50 gram bags. That way people can have it more affordably into their home and treat it better. Because if you have like a kilo of coffee, you let a lot of that go to spill and oxidize and that. So if you do smaller doses, like 21, 50, whatever grams, you can reach a wider audience, because this is not about being snobby. It's about being sensitive. So some people don't understand why coffee costs more, and it does cost more because it's something that really expensive to produce. We try in Ecuador especially to pay very high wages, like our coffee production wages. Like in Colombia, you pay $10 at the most to a coffee harvester. In Central America, it's like $5, $6, $7. In Africa, it's like $1. And in Ecuador, we pay $25 to $30 a day for. That's why coffee becomes a little more expensive. But there's a reason for it. We share more. More money goes into more hands.
Which is the whole point in my mind. It's the
whole point.
If there's going to be a purpose to our work, it has to be to have a positive influence on the world around us. And if we, often, there's in the world of specialty coffee, people are speaking about paying more for their coffee. And I think in many cases that is happening in the specialty world, but where's that money actually going? Is it ending up in the hands of, first world owners of production facilities in Africa, but the money's not really making it back to the farmers and to the pickers? Or is it actually flowing through the supply chain fluidly and having a positive influence? And that's evidently happening in Ecuador, which is amazing. I
absolutely agree with that. That is essential, for the consumers to understand why the coffee costs a little more. It's not just because you are snobby or because you're making someone rich, but because you are sharing more and you're also learning more as a consumer. In that way, when COVID happened, I remember so ugly, we couldn't leave home and stuff like that. But it also brought up some good stuff. Like people became more aware about how coffee is produced, how you have to brew coffee, because coffee shops were closed. So people would order coffee and get it at home. And how do I grind? What's grind size? What's water? What's this? What's that? So all those little things added a little more an intriguing factor to the consumer. And the consumer, I think, started to learn more about coffee, because it's very easy when you go to a coffee shop, you stand on a line, you look cool, you get a Wi-Fi, whatever, and then you buy a coffee and you sit on your laptop, but you're not really aware what's behind that coffee bean. So when COVID happened and you had to stay home, stuck at home, I think people started traveling through coffee. They would buy a bag of Burundi, a bag of Guatemala, a bag of Ecuador, a bag of Panama, and start brew that coffee and become more aware about what the sensory aspect, and also how harder it is to brew a cup of coffee. Just to make a comparison, wine. If you buy a $300 bottle of wine, all you have to do, is open it up, maybe decant it, wait for a few minutes, and then sip it. On coffee, you have to learn how to brew, you have to learn how to grind, you have to learn about water, ppm, this and that. So I think that made more awareness in the coffee community. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely do. And if I speak to, equipment manufacturers like La Marzocco, Comandante, their sales went through the roof. I mean, Comandante couldn't keep up with production for quite a long time, if I remember correctly, because there was just so much demand for home brewing equipment. And I think that like our web store was already doing quite nicely, but it definitely expanded significantly during that period, because as you say, people couldn't go out. They had to stop brewing at home. And it's been great to see how that passion has continued, and education platforms like Lance Hendricks' YouTube channel and James Hoffman, and so many people are sharing the amazing story of coffee to a much wider audience than ever before. And it probably would have happened otherwise, but I think it was accelerated through COVID and people just having more time to focus on things at home, literally just having more time on their hands to explore their passions and develop new passions. You were speaking about grinders, and I remember having quite a long conversation with you in Athens about grinders. You're a bit of a grinder geek, aren't you?
I have in my hand right now, and I was going to.
I heard you dosing some coffee. That's also brought it up for me.
Oh yeah. Isn't that the sound of love? The sound of passion?
That sounds like a Comandante.
Oh man, I love those guys. I love that community. I love what they're doing. They're like bringing in a lot of love. Right now, I'm working with them in Peru and in Ecuador to create more awareness about coffee, and also to bring more Comandante grinders to producers. Because you have to drink good coffee at the farm, and people regularly sell their coffees, but they've never had it. They've never been able to drink their coffees at farm. So I'm working on this program with them, and they're being very fair to us, helping us with a much smaller cost so we can get those grinders to producers. And they love it, man. When a producer has this Comandante at hand, and I'm not trying to sell more Comandantes, I'm just trying to create this awareness that we have to have better quality coffee, but from the producer. The producer has to drink good coffee, so he'll know what it is and what's the difference between harvesting at a very high brix peak, when the coffee's mature, and not having Quakers and stuff like that, but it will only understand if they're drinking it. So we've been able to bring like 50 Comandante grinders to 50 producers in Peru. We've done the same in Ecuador, maybe 12. And it's been a wild ride, man.
That's amazing.
It's been beautiful.
I love that.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's been absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to tell you what I'm brewing. I'm going to be brewing some Longboard Geisha Natural from our friend Justin. Man, that coffee. Woo!
Some of the rarest coffee in the world.
One of the rarest, and unfortunately it has become like very, very hard to buy, and very, very expensive. In Athens, I actually met with Justin because he's one of my oldest friends in the coffee world, and especially in Panama. That's the first person I ever met in the coffee world in Panama. And I was in Athens, and I asked him for some coffee, and the guy, yeah, I have a little bag for you. And I remember it was like 250 euros for 300 grams of coffee green. And I'm like, shit, that's expensive, but I'm going to pay it very gladly, because I know the guy, I know the quality. And if a producer can pay that amount of money to a producer, maybe one day I'll get that money for my coffee too.
Well, I think that's, I hope people listening to this, take that in, because I think that's like a really big thing. You're producing some of the best coffee in the world, but you'll gladly pay $300 for, 250
Absolutely.
grams of coffee from another producer who's doing amazing work.
Absolutely.
It's awesome. I love that so much. Actually, I was in a conversation with Justin on Instagram a while ago, and we were talking about getting some coffee, and for a moment it looked like we were going to get like a little 12 kilo lot from him this year, and then I don't know, the conversation just fizzled out and we had a lot of other stuff going on and I never picked it up. But wow, his coffee is definitely on the dream list of coffees that I would love to work with in the future.
Absolutely.
So
You said 12 kilos?
Yeah.
And 12 kilos for Justin, it's a big load. I mean, if you buy 1 kilo, you should call that a small load, because 12 kilos, because his farms, they must produce, I don't know, maybe 1,000 kilos of coffee or a year.
So
That's
12
it.
kilo lots, a lot of coffee, and it
Man,
probably would have
12
cost
kilo.
me both my kidneys.
Yeah, I've been friends with Justin for 4 years, and I only got a chance to roast his coffee after Athens, because it's so hard to get, and now that he's become a lot more famous because of the BOP and the Espresso Lab and all that, it's almost unaffordable,
Exactly.
but if you get the chance to get 20 grams of it, you should be happy.
That's
That's how
amazing.
I understand people talk about pounds and kilos, but we should reevaluate the sizing of coffee, because I think that if you're able to buy a 20 gram bag of a very special coffee, that should be fair and more than enough, as a consumer to try. You don't need to have more than that.
That's amazing. It's such a great perspective. And I think that really, in South Africa, we've got a very strong espresso culture. And when people start in coffee at home, they will generally go to buy, some generic prosumer espresso machine and grinder, and just have a terrible experience brewing coffee at home, because as we know, espresso is so difficult to get right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you develop this sense that you can't brew coffee at home yourself. You need to go to a coffee shop. But in Europe, it's the other way around, where everyone starts on filter and eventually maybe moves on to espresso. And I think that's the right way to go. I think when we working with these extremely, extremely high-end coffees, filter is just, it allows us to work with a much smaller amount of coffee, and it allows us a much wider window to extract well and to have a good experience with that coffee.
I think it's happening in many ways. Now that you have those capsules that you can pretty much do supposed to be doing a very nice coffee with 5.5 grams. I don't know how sustainable that is. I don't know if it's going to work or not. But there's people are coming up with all sorts of solutions to try to make coffee more available, more democratic to the wider audience. But always keeping in mind that quality goes first, and then you can have all the rest, the packaging, the beauty, the story, and that. But to me, that the key of coffee is being very, very honest on the sense that it has to be copy's king in a way, and also social awareness about how hard it is to create coffee, to make coffee beans. It's not just something that happens like corn or beans that grow like in 3-4 months. Coffee takes 4 years just to start, And if your soil is not good, you need 20 years to recreate the conditions of the soil, planting trees, and then you can plant coffee. So sometimes it takes 25 years to grow a plant of coffee. And that's something that people do not understand. There's a lot of responsibility, a lot of risk. Sometimes you plant coffee, then you have a big rain and everything is lost. And that part of coffee is not being communicated properly. When you go to these beautiful shows around the world and World Barista events, it's all about, the coffee, the people, the community, and that's okay. But there's a lack of knowledge on the basics of how does coffee come into your table. That is, I think, something we need to dig in deeper and create more awareness, because there's a big problem happening in the world, Dario, because most of the young, the sons of producers are abandoning their fields because it's not sustainable to grow coffee. They've seen their fathers and their uncles and their grandfathers doing coffee for generations and being poor. So what they want to do, they want to migrate to the city, go on Exodus and become, whatever, an Uber driver. And when they had the opportunity of becoming a coffee farmer, but they wouldn't do it because the prices are so low, because the global community is not aware of that. So I think we have a big responsibility, us, you, me, about creating awareness so we have more young people into the next generations of coffee. You were saying that I was very lucky in the last few years of making my farm more, famous or whatever word would be after that. Is not selling more coffee. It's not making more money. It's seeing my son, Jose Ignacio, that was grew up in the coffee farm with me, seeing me suffering. And he said, I don't want to be a coffee guy. I want to be a lawyer. I want to go away from the farm. And now that he's seen this little success that we've been having, he came back to the farm. He's become a really good copper. He's working with me. And now he's moving to New York City to start working in a coffee shop. And I'm like, shit, man, this is the best thing that happened to me. So that's important, I think.
That's amazing. I'm absolutely thrilled to hear that. I recorded a podcast with a very good friend of mine, Alejo Castro from Volcan Azul in Costa Rica, about a week ago. Alejo was, so he's a 6th generation farmer, and you know, our relationship actually started and grew around the concept of he's got a daughter and I've got 2 kids, and you know, we're building businesses for the future. We're trying to build something that matters long term, not something to just, you know, make a profit now and have a good life now. It's about conserving, being sustainable, and being good shepherds of the opportunities we have now, so that in the future our kids can take it over. And we do a project every year called Project Next Gen. It's all about the next generation. And he said it's the same thing. If it wasn't for the way that his family has approached coffee and the way that he now has moved into microlots and nanolots, there wouldn't be an opportunity for the next generation, because it's so expensive to produce. It's so expensive to run these farms. It's not exciting and sustainable for the next generation unless we move into this new space where we assign a higher value to the crop. We assign a higher value to the cup of coffee in front of us and spread that message and tell the story well. And that, as you say, is the responsibility of the growers, the producers, the roasters, the cafe owners. It's very, very important. And it is exciting to see it happening. It is definitely happening around us.
Exactly. That to me is amazing. Like when you go to the shows and you see there's producers in the shows, and there's people connecting, and green coffee buyers not only relaying their money and their purchases to like a middleman, you know, like a Caravella, like a Vermax, like those coffee imports companies that do a good job. But I think, you know, the buyer of the coffee, the roaster, the owner of the coffee shop has to go to origin, has to take the trip. You know, it's a long, traveling is not the same as it used to be 20 years ago. Airplanes are smaller, and there's always full and all. It's hard to get to origin, but it's so important, Dario. It's so important that you get to mingle with the people from the farm, with the owners, with his family, and you will be able to convey the story a lot better, and so that the consumer will know. The consumer cannot always travel to a producing country, but it's a responsibility of the coffee shop owner and the roaster to travel more and create more awareness into the consumer. And I think that's important. So I'm waiting for you in Ecuador. That should be your next step.
Oh man, I cannot wait. It has to happen next year. I'm so excited. It's literally at the top of the list of origin trips. In terms of, you know, going back a step now and the difficulty of growing coffee and producing amazing coffee, you've chosen to work with just a few varietals on your farm. You've got Geisha, Sidra, Típica Mejorado, and Panama Geisha more recently, a different strain of Geisha. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Sidra, Típica Mejorado are 2 varietals that came from a very strange way to Ecuador. The Nestle big corporation project, they were doing something about hybridations and creating F1 varietals that were rust resistant, but also very high in quality. So they had a lab in Ecuador for like 12, 15 years, actually one of the first labs in South America. And the funny thing is that a guy that worked there, he heard and he tested the coffees as well. And he took a few seeds of the coffees that were apparently the best in sensory, took them to his farm, grew them up. And that's how the Típica and Sidra revolution started in Ecuador. Nestle didn't like that, but when I always talked to their executives, I said, you guys should be happy because you helped a country like Ecuador that was, relying on Colombia, Brazil, and Peru to get their seeds to have their own varietal, because it takes a varietal 20 years to start adapting to a soil. Like, in Panama, they had geisha since the 80s, but they never knew it was good until like the year 2000 with the Esmeralda family, the auction and all, blah, 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 and became a boom. But it's not like you bring a seed to a country and it instantly becomes something good. It takes like 15, 20 years for it to adapt and express the best of it. And I think in Ecuador, we were lucky enough to have this so-called Típica, because it's not a Típica, but a Bourbon hybridation with the heirloom and the Sidra, which is a land race, and that. It's a funny story, but at the end, it gave Ecuador the opportunity as a very small country, because Ecuador, compared to Colombia, we're like 20 times smaller. And in coffee production, we're like 100 times smaller, and against Peru and against Brazil. And now Ecuador is on the map, there was a statistic made from the World Barista Championship. There was a very nice guy, I can't remember his name, but he was studying, in the last 5 years, which countries were most used in coffee, and it was always Colombia, Panama, Colombia, Panama, Colombia, Panama. And now you start seeing more Africa, and you start seeing more Ecuador. So I'm very excited about that, man. I'm really, really happy about helping other producers from Ecuador getting better prices, so everybody will be happy.
That's amazing, and you're completely correct. I mean, from my perspective, we're so isolated out here in South Africa, but we take all our cues from social media and the fairs that we get to visit. And Ecuador is, I think we're a couple of years away from Panama and Ecuador being on the same sort of level in terms of reputation for quality, because it's not just your coffee that is blowing minds from Ecuador. There are a number of producers doing really, really incredible work, and the mindset around production also seems to be very pure and very nature focused, and not there are other origins like Colombia where we're seeing so much infusion happening and co-fermentations and all of these kinds of things, and unfortunately it's kind of like muddying the water a little bit in my mind, and making it even more difficult for the consumer to really understand the work that is actually happening at farm level, at the level of producing extremely high coffee, when the message is changing now all of a sudden. And yet there are countries like Panama and like Ecuador where there just seems to be a purity around the farming and processing, which I really love.
I think the people in Panama have done an outstanding work, and I don't think there's ever going to be a country that will stand as the same as Panama, because I think they've done so much work, 20, 25 years in the back, and they're so passionate. I don't know if you've been to Panama, Dario, but all the producers there, they're like, you have this idea of they're like rock stars, but they also so much in love with their coffee. Like you meet like, for example, Wilford Lamasus Sr. Man, that guy breathes. He has coffee in his veins. You're so inspired by spending some time with him, or Justin, or Joseph from 90 Plus, or Kai Janson. Those guys they live for coffee, and they go to all the events around the world, and they showcase the Panama geisha so well. I think they're an inspiration for all the rest of us. And I think Ecuador has learned a lot from Panama. And I agree with you that there's this kind of noise and muddy waters about people using crazy ferments from wine and infusing coffee. And that's something that's becoming like a vogue. And I do see a lot of young people attracted by it. And that's good, because more people are being attracted to coffee. But in the long term, I think the crazy infusion world will start descending again, because it becomes boring. All the coffees taste the same, very waxy, artificial, funky flavors, and people are starting to go back into what true terroir washes are. And I think one of the reasons why people like the tea oxidator so much is because there's also been so much funkiness, so much infusion. So they try, oh, this coffee is sweet and nice. Oh, this is what I want, because it cools down and it becomes like having a glass of spring water. It's not something funky or artificial. So I think in that sense, the craziness of the artificial and infused world has also done some good, because from one side, it has brought a wider audience to try coffees. Younger people, I like this crazy mango feeling. But then they get tired of that, and they go back into the terroir wash coffees. I have that feeling, I have that feeling that we have to embrace everything, and we have to be open about everything. But at the end, it's always going to be nature and clean wash coffees that are going to start being at the peak. That's my impression.
I completely agree with you. And it is interesting to, I'm not into the infusions and co-ferments and that type of thing, but it is interesting to taste some of the, the bio-innovation, bioreactor yeast fermentation sort of techniques. I think that is quite interesting. And again, just pushing the boundaries, like what can coffee taste like? And then, I talk about stretching the elastic band. Like, let's find out what's possible. Let's stretch and stretch and stretch, and then come back to a point that makes sense and that really represents what we believe in and what we want to taste in our coffee. And I agree with you. That's why I'm a fan of your style of coffee, of Thai Oxidator, and of the wave, the Sidra wave we've had. It's been so well received. And,
cool.
I would say especially Thai Oxy, it's just... It tastes to me, it's like a washed coffee plus. It's just, elevated with intentionality and with real attention to detail. For our listeners who aren't aware, did you come up with the term thioxidator, and what does that actually mean? What does the coffee go through before we get to receive it?
Yeah, because people talk a lot about fermentation, and fermentation is putting coffee in anaerobic environments a lot. And I was just trying a lot of that. And one day I just left a few tanks open and an oxidation process started, which is the contrary of fermentation. That's when you have a lot of oxygen present. And what happens there is like things move very fast. You can rot a coffee very fast if you leave an open tank. And if you leave it to ferment, you can stretch the fermentation time longer. But in that case, we did this experiment with open tanks, and we had like chemicals reaction happen much faster. And I said, oh shit, I can do a natural now because the coffee is kind of like not looking so good. So I went into depulping it, and then we did a slow fermentation on mucilage. Then we quickly washed the coffee, and wow, boom, very sweet, very nice, very complex, but very clean. So that's how the tea oxidator name came in, man.
That's incredible. And are you producing more and more of that style of coffee? Is that your highest demand coffee at the moment?
Yeah, I think that and the wave and the natural wave are what we mostly do. I want to always try to process coffee the least possible to make it shine, not to go into funkiness, woodiness, and muddiness, but always try to have a balance where the coffee, as you said, tastes like a wash, but also is a little more complex and layered. So that's like, the golden grail for us. It's not easy. Sometimes experiments go well, sometimes they don't. Like I have 5 or 6 bags of coffees that I didn't like. So I'm not gonna try to sell them to someone because I didn't like them. So that's what it is. Like maybe 20% of what you make is not what you expect. But that's life. You cannot control all the variables. The idea is just to keep exploring and finding new things, but always being true to the terroir. And the concept of like clean, crisp, elegant being more important than intense or funky or stuff like that. Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. And I'm blown away by the quality you're producing. And I know that every year you're experimenting with new techniques and you're adding more control, darkroom drying, and so on and so forth. And it's just really exciting for me as a coffee enthusiast, as a coffee consumer first and foremost, to think about what's coming in the future. What is your coffee going to taste like in the future as your techniques and processes improve over time? One of the things that you said in Athens that stuck with me was every coffee, if it's farmed well, so every cherry coming off the tree has the potential to be a very high scoring coffee, a 90 plus or whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, every step of the way, from drying and fermentation to roasting to brewing, we have the chance to mess it up. And all we've got to do is try not to do that. We need to try and preserve that quality as much as possible.
Yeah. Nature makes perfect beans, my friend. Like when you try a cherry right off the tree and you taste that sweetness, that papaya, that florality, and then we start making little mistakes because we want to speed up things, or we use water that's dirty, or we over ferment, or we dry too fast, and we start breaking down that coffee into something that's less beautiful. So it's a challenge, and there's no rule, there's no recipe. Every farm has its own magic. What you do here may not work there, but I think the key right now is to create awareness through sensory. It's not about how beautiful your label is, how beautiful your coffee shop is. It's a global change, like goes into basically copy king. I think if people sense, if people try and fall in love with it, that's when we are really creating a revolution there. And it's very important that our kids understand that, and we create more awareness, and this revolution will not die with us. You keep getting bigger and bigger, like a huge wave, and inspiring more people to be more aware and more careful about the planet and about what they eat, what they consume, what they say, what they spend their money at. We have to reevaluate all those things.
Responsible consumption. I love it.
Yes.
That's the idea. It's been so good to catch up with you, and I'm just so in awe of what you're doing, and I'm so grateful that we have such a strong spokesperson for quality in the industry. You're doing such an amazing job. I'm inspired by you every day, and I can't wait to come and visit Finca Soledad and hopefully end up at the coast and getting some surfing done as well. Maybe we can do a bit of a surf camp, man.
do that. We can go to the Galapagos Islands and maybe have some time there, because there are some waves and some very nice things happening around the world. I always say that when you do an origin trip, you have to do, of course, the farm visit and the cuppings and all, but you have to know a little more about the country. When I used to do the 7 summits, I would go to a place, climb this mountain specifically, but then I would take some time off and do some other stuff, because it's important not to be like too much like focused on one thing, but also trying to get a glimpse of what the world is, and tell the tale and tell the message. That's why I think your podcasts are so cool, man, because you're openly free to allow producers and invitees to talk about their lives, not just about coffee. So
Absolutely.
People and consumers get a better perspective,
I'm inspired by people's motivation. I think that as soon as we start delving deeper into the reason why we do things, it becomes a lot more important. So, I mean, a friend of mine always used to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that that's true in the coffee world. We're not really too interested in the science and not necessarily the science, but we're not too interested in people's opinions until we know that they actually care about what they're doing and there's a pure motivation behind their work. And it's evident in that's what you bring to the table. So yeah, man, I take my hat off to you. I'm so grateful for the partnership, and it's a thrill for Bluebird and for myself personally to represent your coffees in South Africa. And
completely.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm very excited as well, man. When I see the work that you've done, like starting the roastery, starting the shop, and how you motivate your workers and the people around you, and your coffee flying around the world, roasted in South Africa, man, that really makes me have goosebumps, because I think we can break the system. I think we can make things on a totally different level just by pure sheer joy and passion, man. That you can achieve anything. You can go and roast coffee in fucking North Pole if you want to. You can have a coffee shop in Antarctica. Everything is possible. That's the message that I feel that I'm getting from you, because everything is possible. You can do whatever you dream, you put your heart into, and you are an example of that. So
thank you.
Hats on to you, brother.
Thank you so much, Pepe. My personal philosophy is that it's a short, long life. And we can do anything, but we need to start now, and we need to have a sense of urgency. We have enough time to make an impact, but we don't have enough time to sit around and wait to make the impact. We have to do it now.
Lovely, man.
Yeah.
I'm really happy of talking to you and having my son here next to me. And a few hours from now, he's going to the airport on a one-way ticket to New York City just to look for his life. That's another amazing story, man.
Jose, I wish you all the best. And my partner's cousin actually lives in New York. He works for a well-known multi-roaster cafe in New York. So I'll definitely reach out to you directly, and hopefully we can connect you guys as well, because he's kind of well connected in that space, and just make another friend in the city. And you never know.
So much. I'm just so pleased to meet new people and get new experiences and everything. I'm just so excited. I'm also sad because I'm leaving so much behind, but I just couldn't be happier.
So all the best to you, to your team, to Fanny, to the people of South Africa, and just hope you keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing it very well. And I really hope to meet you in person soon at any of the shows or at the farm next year.
Yeah.
Your place in our heart, and let's make the world a better place, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. Safe travels, and we'll speak soon.
Speak soon, my man.
Ciao.
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 Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Pepe is an inspiration to myself, my team, and so many people around the world. He's doing incredible work. His coffees are absolutely amazing. We have coffee of his on our menu right now and more coming. And we hope you get to try it, enjoy it, and appreciate the work that's happening at farm level. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please give our podcast a 5-star, share it, download, do all the things you know to do to help us to grow our channel. We're hoping to spread this message far and wide and connect with as many of you legends as possible. Whether you enjoyed it or not, the next episode is coming soon, and we'll see you then. Ciao.